Why did I switch from BlackMagic to Sony? That's a tough one. In this video, I basically want to talk about the main reasons that I switched and sold my BlackMagic Pocket 4K cinema camera and went back to Sony. Now, before I start this video, I'm not at all saying BlackMagic is a bad camera. I'm not banishing it. I'm not demising it. None of that. BlackMagic is actually a very, very good camera. It's just not a good camera for me and my needs. Some of the good things about the BlackMagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K is it shoots in 4K, it shoots in 4K 60. It is a micro 4/3 sensor, and that is one of the reasons why I kind of got rid of it, because if you know micro 4/3 sensors, it's not ideal for low light situations. Can you use it in low light? Absolutely, but will it produce A7S III quality in low light? Not at all. The sensor is significantly smaller than a full frame sensor. Now, I don't always shoot in low light situations, but whenever I did have to, I just found it to be just a pain in the neck because it didn't have dual auto ISO like the A7S III does. Now, a thing to note, if you never used a cinema camera or if you've never even heard of a BlackMagic Pocket 4K cinema camera, it is a full-on cinema camera. Therefore, there is absolutely no autofocus in it at all. Everything is manual focus. And that's not a big issue for me because I actually enjoyed manually focusing it, and sometimes I still manually focus on my A7S III. Now, another good thing about the BlackMagic is the lens choices. The lens choices for that camera was actually fairly cheaper than the A7S III options, because just like the A7S III, there was a lot of options for that camera. Now, when buying that camera, I didn't really do a whole lot of research on it, and that was honestly the key factor into my financial mistake in buying that camera. I just at the time typed in cheap, nice cinema cameras under $1,200. I found a YouTube video on it, seen the colors of it, and was like, wow, I think this can really work for me. Not knowing anything about it. I didn't check the specs. I didn't even know that it was a micro 4/3 sensor. I didn't know any of that. I just seen the quality of it and thought it was a really good option. And that is a mistake that I highly encourage that you do not make whenever purchasing your new camera, because you will waste a lot of money on something that ultimately you probably don't even want, or it won't even work for your needs. Now, the BlackMagic Pocket 4K cinema camera, it was definitely oddly shaped. Out of all the cameras that I used, the A7S III, the Canon RP, even the Canon C70, the BlackMagic Pocket is just, it's weirdly shaped, and it's honestly not ideal for whenever I was traveling. Those are just some things that I encountered when using it that I just found very, very frustrating in my daily use of it. Now, another big issue that I had with this camera, which complicated my workflow so much, was the fact that I had to transcode these files into Final Cut Pro. So I had to buy a $65 plugin in order to use the footage from my SD card from the BlackMagic in order to work in Final Cut Pro. That just slowed down my process so much more, and it became so tedious and so annoying, and it's just, honestly, that was another big reason why I sold the camera. It would slow down my computer so bad because it had to transcode the files. Now, I don't have the fastest computer. I'm working off a 2012 MacBook Pro. So honestly, it's not all BlackMagic's fault, because I still have trouble sometimes with my A7S III footage, but it's not as bad as the BlackMagic was. I do plan on upgrading because I do need an M1 MacBook, or any M1 honestly, because my computer just cannot handle this footage. But at the time when I had the BlackMagic, it was very, very frustrating. Now, one good note to add about the BlackMagic is the menu layout on the BlackMagic camera is honestly probably like the best menu layout that I ever used, because it was so simple, so right to the point, very easy in your face. It's not like Canon or Sony where the menu layout is honestly kind of overwhelming. It's just so many different stuff that you can go through. With the BlackMagic, it just has your basics. It had your audio levels, it had what frame rates you want to shoot in. It didn't have all these extra stuff that you really don't really need, but they made it very, very simple for the easy user to use. So for me, the BlackMagic Pocket Cinema camera, it was a good camera while I had it. Even though it was a micro 4/3 sensor, even though it was oddly shaped, even though it didn't have autofocus, even though it wasn't the best in low light situations, it was still an okay camera, just not a good enough camera for me and what I work in. Now, would I recommend this camera if you're a beginner cinematographer? No, because if you don't have the experience, if you don't know anything about cinema cameras, you're gonna find this camera very, very frustrating for you, because again, you gotta manually pull focus. If you never experience any camera that has to manually pull focus, then it could be kind of tricky for you. You're gonna have to learn to get steady shots without having to rely on in-body stabilization. There's just so much more factors that you're gonna have to put into consideration when getting this camera, because it's not a typical mirrorless camera. It's a cinema camera, so therefore it has the cinema features. Now, do I regret selling my BlackMagic Pocket 4K? Not at all. I'm honestly happy that I switched to Sony, For Sony, it just has so much more features, so much more about Sony that I just generally like. Now, I do plan on buying another cinema camera, and I was gonna get the FX30, but after reviewing the footage and testing it out, it's just too similar, in my opinion, to the A7S III. I want something that's completely different. So I have my eyes on the FX6. If you have that, please, in the comment section, leave below how much you love it, how much you enjoy it, because that's something that I'm really wanting, and I'm really trying to work hard to get, because if you know anything about the FX6, it's a very expensive camera, and it's something that I'm willing to work hard for and get. Now, if you're in the market and you're thinking about buying a Blackmagic Pocket 4K or even FX30 or I don't know, a FX6, even though that's completely out of the price range, if you're thinking along those lines, let's just say a FX30 or R5C or the Blackmagic Pocket 4K. If you're thinking about those three, I say really do your research depending on what you need. Figure out what you're going to use it for. If you're going to be traveling with it, or if you're primarily doing documentary work, figure out what it is you need it for and make your decision based off that. Honest opinion, I say if you're doing travel work or even corporate work or any commercial work, I say get the FX30 because it's just smaller. It is a little bit more expensive. I think that one is $1,800 and the 4K is around $1,200. It is more expensive, but I think that it might suit your needs a little bit better than the Blackmagic, because with the FX30, you won't have to buy a third-party plug-in. You won't have an oddly shaped camera. The battery life on the Blackmagics are really bad, so you're gonna have to get a battery grip. That's just more money. When buying a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, you're not just buying the camera, you're gonna have to buy a whole rig for it in order to use it. So you gotta buy the tilted cage, you gotta buy a Sony battery. I think the V-mount batteries actually work for the Blackmagic. I had a Sony battery. Whenever I would travel, I would always have to bring at least 6 batteries in order to fully shoot a whole day. That's how bad the battery life was. So I just bought a battery grip and put 3 in at once, and it worked for a couple hours. But that's it for today's video. I just wanted to explain my reasoning and why I got rid of the Blackmagic. Do I regret it? Nah. Would I buy it again? Nah. Is it a bad camera? Nah. It's a great camera, but everyone has their reasons and their opinions on why they do things and get rid of things. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Put down in the comments what camera you're currently using, why you love it, or what camera that you're saving up for and you're trying to buy. I would love to know. I respond to everybody's comments. I really do. So if you leave a comment, I'm gonna see it and I'm gonna respond to you. I'll catch you in the next video. Abiantu, Banjoni.